He is Albert Breer, the peripatetic Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter. He's the Monday morning quarterback. He joins us now. Where are you right now, Albert?
I feel like I have to apologize because this is like an awfully big letdown after last week. I am in the waiting room at a car dealership getting my oil changed.
Okay.
So,
all right.
And I'm not on vacation anymore. But this is all the stuff I have to do before I leave for camp because I'll be gone for most of the next month.
Okay, let's guess. Let's play what kind of car does Albert Breer drive?
Oh, now I'm going to sound like such a douche.
That's a big hint.
Okay.
It's a big hint.
I like it. Okay. That might change my answer. Todd?
Nissan Sentra.
Nissan Sentra.
Oh, that's not a...
You can't be a douche with that. Okay, Seton?
Oh, man, this is... Oh, wait, you said oil change, so it can't be an electric car. How about Porsche?
No, it'd be a Porsche.
A Porsche.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
a great
Porsche,
car, though.
Porsche Cayenne.
That's a great car.
Yes, they are. Marvin?
Range Rover.
Range Rover. Paulie?
I got to stick with that. I was, Albert's Northeast. I knew all-wheel drive would be in his repertoire, but I'm also going Range Rover. Based off his hint.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the Range Rover too. And here we go with the great reveal. Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback, drives
a BMW.
Oh!
Nice.
Okay.
All right.
Range Rover was close though. I think that's in the same like douche category, right? So I feel like you guys were in the neighborhood.
That's great.
See, we also have a Tahoe, so like if I was at the Chevy dealership, I would have been much more relatable.
Okay.
I think, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You're right.
So
you're right.
Timing's everything.
Peter King. That's probably what he drives. He's more relatable than you.
I'm not. It's unfortunate. Again, timing's everything.
All right, the Jets and Hard Knocks. The Jets don't want to cooperate and let you, show these guys getting cut. Well, that's 30% of Hard Knocks is those moments where these guys get brought in and they get cut. Now, can the Jets say to Hard Knocks, "We're not going to let the cameras in"?
Like to a certain degree, yes. I've talked to coaches and general managers who have been through this, and I believe it airs on Tuesday nights, right? On Monday night, they'll get a copy of it and they'll be able to look through it and they'll be able to take out what they want to take out. And sometimes, I know there are cases where coaches and general managers have pulled that lever and said, I don't want this or this or this in there. I don't think it's all that common. Because one thing I would say is the films people are pretty good, and I think I know you've probably dealt with them over the years. DP is they have a good way about them about as much as they need and as many cameras as are going to be there. They do their best. They make the best effort to try to be flies in the wall, and try to be out of the way. And the people who are on the ground, and I know a few of them worked with some of those guys at NFL Network are good people and. Generally, they've been through this, so they're able to build relationships where, by the time you go to air, which is 2.5 weeks into camp, they've built that level of trust where coaches and GMs are willing to work with them on stuff, But this is a different situation, this is the first time where they don't have a volunteer, they've got a hostage. And, I know one of the things the Jets had sort of discussed in the spring when this came up was, how they're already sort of at capacity from a media standpoint with everything that Aaron Rodgers is going to bring along with him, with everything that, all the hype around them is going to bring with it. Like they feel like between the amount of media that's going to be going through there over the 3 or 4 weeks of camp, between, the in-house stuff that they've got to do, and then just locally, the amount of people that are going to be there locally, they're going to be at capacity. And, I think it's going to make for an interesting few weeks. And the other thing that's interesting is like the next week or two should be, pretty fascinating as well, because normally if you look at it, like the Lions, that Hard Knocks was announced on March 28th, I believe, of last year. Normally Hard Knocks goes in, HBO and films go in the spring in May and June to collect all the B-roll and do all the background work and everything else. Well, they don't have that done now. So, to make the show sing like it normally sings, they're going to have to get pretty intensive over the next, week or two. And, that of course could lead to, some friction between the crew and the team.
Can Liev Schreiber voice something scripted as an actor with what's going on with the writers' strike?
I don't know. I'm not up to date on that one. So you know more about that than me. I'm not sure. I didn't even know that. Like, that's the first I've heard that could be a factor, but that's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's a scripted show.
Yeah.
And then he voices it. But I was just curious if he's able to.
You know what? When we get off this call, I'm actually going to maybe make a few phone calls and figure that out, because I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point. And I hadn't, that obviously, would seem to be another hurdle that they'd have to clear here. And what's going to be, potentially a summer full of them for the Hard Knocks crew.
Tweet that came out, veteran running backs are organizing a group, a text chain, and I guess they're commiserating with one another. I don't know, how do running backs get paid? Or why do we care if they get paid or they don't get paid?
I think, there's a human element to it, of course, right? Like, which is these guys take an absolute beating, and they are valuable. The problem they have, there's a few problems. I would say like about 4 problems here. Number one, their prime happens during their rookie contracts, right? Like, whereas with a receiver or a pass rusher or a tackle or certainly a quarterback, like, they're just hitting their prime as they come out of their rookie contracts. Like, you could argue running backs, like, the heart of their prime is during that rookie contract. And it's played out in cases like Todd Gurley and Ezekiel Elliott, where the team's got the best years when those guys were under cost control. So what everybody's fighting for in the NFL, which is to get to a second contract, it's much harder for a running back because you're not paying for past performance. You're paying for future performance. And history shows us that the best performance that they're going to have after 4 or 5 years is their past performance. The franchise tag is a problem because it's so affordable, right? Like, and if you look at that and you say, it's not a smart investment to invest in a 6th and 7th year for a running back with the pounding that they take, then a team can very easily look at that and say, we'd rather just go year to year with you. So the franchise tag's a problem because it's so affordable and such an easy mechanism for teams not to commit long-term to these guys. There's
All right, well, then give me a solution. Give me a solution here that everybody...
I don't know. You know what one of the biggest problems is, Dan, is like how replaceable they are. Like, look at the Super Bowl. Like, that's the issue. It's not that Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs or Tony Pollard aren't excellent players. They're all really good players. It's, well, like, what if I do let this guy go? Like, when negotiations get tough, it's like, okay, like, so like, what's behind door number 2? And then you look at the 2 teams in the Super Bowl, and the Chiefs starting running back in the Super Bowl was a 7th round rookie, Isaiah Pacheco. And the Eagles starting running back was Miles Sanders, who was on a rookie contract. And after the season, they let him go for just over $6 million a year in free agency, right? So what does that tell you? I think that's the problem is it's not that these guys aren't great players. It's that teams are looking at it and saying, it's much easier for me to fill this position than it would be for me to find a great receiver or to find a great corner. The same thing sort of exists on the offensive line. Like, that's why tackles get paid, right? Like, I can find a guard. I can find a center. It's really hard to find a great left tackle, right? In the secondary, I can find a great corner, or I can find a great safety. I can find a good safety. I can be good enough there. It's really hard to find a great corner. So I think that that's a huge part of it. And I think that that's why, as long as there's so many options for teams out there to fill the position in different ways, like, what are you going to do? Like the Rams, right? Like, the Rams have been a big part of this because they pivoted halfway through that building process to really focus on building around premium positions, right? So they focused on corners, Jalen Ramsey, pass rushers, Aaron Donald, tackles, Andrew Whitworth, receivers, Cooper Kupp, quarterback, obviously Matthew Stafford. And they went to a Super Bowl with Todd Gurley and lost. They come back a couple of years later. They weren't near as good at running back, right, in 2021 as they were in 2018. But they won the Super Bowl. So that's the issue, I think, is it just becomes too replaceable. And I think one thing that's highlighted that certainly is analytics, right? Like, because now it's not teams just like looking at it based on their own experience. They've got like numbers to quantify all of this as well. And so, I think the replaceability factor is a really, really big one here.
He's Albert Breer, joining us from some car dealership, getting his BMW's oil change. He is the Monday morning quarterback. That's, of course, what you would expect the Monday morning quarterback to drive. Belichick and the hot seat.
Yeah.
Real or fabricated?
I don't think he'll get fired. It's just I think Robert Kraft would pursue something different than that if he were trying to push him out. Now, I don't know Bill could force him to fire him. I think they need to show progress, though, for there not to be some level of shakeup. And, I think like you're starting to see a level of discomfort with the Krafts on where they are and some of the statements that Robert Kraft has made over the last couple of years. And look, I think if you look at where they are now versus 2019, it's hard to say they're not on an upward trajectory. And then if you look, it's like, how many players in the roster can you say are going to be there 3 years from now, right? Like where this guy is a good enough player where I know he's going to be there in 3 years. Yeah. Like say Garrett Wilson or Sauce Gardner are for the Jets, right? Like that guy's going to be there. So I think as much as winning and losing, this year is going to be about showing that. But
they have to be bad to get better from the standpoint of getting drafted. The Jets were bad and got those draft picks. The Patriots are average.
They struck out on a lot of draft picks too, though. And that's the thing is, and I understand what you're saying is are they stuck in that, you're the 45-win NBA team, like that thing, right? Like where, you're good enough to be competitive, but not good enough to get over the top. But I think that's a big part of it is finding creative ways to show you're on an upward trajectory, right? And I think if you look at the roster, there are some good young players on that, but Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, are these Michael Wenu, are these guys that are going to be cornerstones for you for the next decade? I don't know. And then there's the quarterback question. So I think the Krafts are concerned about the direction of the franchise, especially after what they went through last year on the coaching staff, right? And I think Bill needs to show that they are back on the way up again, because this is the 4th year without Brady, right? So we've gone through almost a whole cycle of rookies and all of that, since Brady's been gone. So they need to show, Bill needs to show we're on an upward trajectory to prevent there being some level of change for the second straight year in the organization. And I think where you could see this, right, the way I see it, barring a bottoming out where they're 4-13 or something, what if Robert Kraft wants to hire a GM? What if Robert Kraft wants changes on the coaching staff? He did this year. Or if he wants to do that again? Is that the type of thing where it makes Belichick throw his hands up and say, the hell with this, I'm out, so.
But they're not helping Mac Jones. That if you look at what the Dolphins did with Tua, the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones, I don't know if he's a good quarterback or not, but if I put him in Miami or put him in Philadelphia, I'm going to guess he's going to be a whole lot better than he is in New England.
And you're at least going to have clarity, right? And that's the question. And I think the problem, the fundamental problem here, Dan, is they're building it's still 10 years ago. They're building like they still have Tom Brady. And if you look at their roster, there are a whole bunch of good players, but how many great players do they have? And the way the league is going, you see teams that are built around great players and making it work everywhere else, right? The best teams now have great players at premium positions and make it work everywhere else. The Patriots aren't like that. The Patriots are trying to build on balance again, which when you have Tom Brady, that works because he can lift all boats, right? Look at the offseason 2 years ago, right? So they went in to brought these guys, and Matthew Judon on defense really worked. But on offense, they brought in Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne at receiver, and they brought in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith at tight end. Meanwhile, other teams, instead of going for 3 or 4 guys, were making the splash. Like you said, A.J. Brown to Philly, Devontae Adams to Vegas, Tyreek Hill to Miami. And I think what we've seen is it really helps your young quarterback more than anything else to get the guy who changes the dynamic for everybody, right? And Patrick Mahomes had that in Tyreek Hill when he was young. Now Tua Tagovailoa is getting it with Hill and Waddle. Like you said, Jalen Hurts has gotten it with A.J. Brown. In Buffalo, Stephon Diggs was traded for 3 years into Josh Allen's career. you're going to have some big decisions to make on Mac Jones after this year on the 5th-year option, whether to extend him, all of that, whether to go after another quarterback after this year. And I think my biggest question would be whether or not they've done enough to give themselves clarity on that. Like you said, are you going to be able to get yourself closer to a clear answer on whether he's the guy or not based on what you've put around him? And the idea that might not happen as a result of the way they built the team.
Yeah, I think what we're finding out is players will go to New England if they can win a Super Bowl and you have Tom Brady. Players aren't looking to go to New England just to say, I played for Bill Belichick.
Right.
It's great to see. Are there other people in the waiting room there?
I don't know. I'll text you after and we'll figure that out.
Okay.
I guess somebody knocked on the door right before I came in, but I didn't hear it because I'm oblivious to everything.
They must be wondering what you're doing in there. You're talking to yourself there. But
well, like I said, this has got to be like the biggest step down in the history of the show when it comes to backdrop from last week to this week, right?
Yeah. You had the water behind you, and now you got a pale-looking wall, and I think there's a mechanic walking around behind you there.
Well, hey, over the next few weeks, if you guys want to check out like what Marriott backdrops look like, I'll be able to help you guys out there.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us as always, Albert.
All right, thanks, Dan.
That's Albert Breer. He is the Monday morning quarterback, and he's just like you and me. He gets his oil changed.